Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me here today. Allow me to begin by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional territory of the signatories to Treaty 7 and to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. Today, Danielle Smith took the first step in her long-term plan to steal your pension. She did it by releasing a report riddled with fake numbers. And she now plans to spend your money campaigning to convince you it's a good idea. It's not. In short, your pension is not safe. For years, the UCP has talked about doing this. And while Smith claims today that she wouldn't have control of Alberta's pensions funds under her new plan, what we do know is that in the past, she's actually talked openly about using those pension funds to pay for a police force. She mused about taking those pension funds to pay for 2,000 tax collectors. And she's talked about using your pension dollars to prop up economic pet projects. The report today that I've briefly had a chance to review reads like it's too good to be true. And of course, that's because it is. The claims made about potential premium savings are based on numbers that are just not real. Quite frankly, if they can extract that much money from the Canada Pension Plan, they will kill it all across the country, not just here. Not just for Canadians, but for all of us Albertans too. The claim of money owed today is actually 5 times the figure that they initially cited in their own Fair Deal report 2 years ago. And also, this whole plan isn't actually about attacking the federal government. It's actually about killing a world-renowned retirement savings plan built by and for all Canadians, including those who moved from other parts of the country to here, and those here in Alberta who plan to move elsewhere to retire. And Danielle Smith is going to use your own money, public dollars, to campaign on convincing you that this is all a good idea. Now, beyond the major threat to retirement security, it also creates significant instability for our economy. Investors will be very cautious, and that's why so many different business groups have already indicated that they are opposed to this idea. Danielle Smith has already made up her mind on this. She believed in an Alberta pension plan for decades. But at the end of the day, how many Albertans really trust Danielle Smith to have the final say over what happens to their pension? I believe the vast majority do not. Alberta's NDP will do everything in our power to protect your retirement and your future economic security. My friends, your pension is yours. It doesn't belong to Danielle Smith. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you. So let's take a stand for retirement security. Let's protect our CPP. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions that folks here might have.
Okay, we'll start with questions in the room, then move to questions on the line. We'll start with one question, one follow-up, and then see how we're doing for time.
Kelly Kratterman, Globe and Mail. I just wanted to ask you, do you know that there will be a campaign one way or the other on this? Jim Dinning did talk about this being an independent panel during the press conference today.
Listen, the very fact that the government released the report that they released today, riddled with misleading numbers designed to convince people of a savings that is absolutely not real, suggests to me that they've picked a side and that they are going to campaign on it. And I have every expectation that we're going to see more of Albertans' money used to convince them about the so-called benefits of this ridiculous plan. And I wish we could say it was objective and that it would be balanced, but again, the report itself makes it pretty clear that that's not going to be what we see.
Rick Bell, Calgary Sun. If you had become the government in the last election, that report was out there. Just out of curiosity, what would you have done with the report? Because you would have had it on your desk, but what would you have done?
Well,
Knowing what's in it.
Yeah, knowing what's in it. Well, I mean, it's very, we likely would have hired more objective experts to provide the full scope of the information that Albertans needed to see, and then we would have released it, but we would not have moved further with this. We were very clear about this. When I was in government, we worked very hard with our provincial counterparts across the country to expand the Canada Pension Plan and to improve benefits as a result. And my view is that we are Canadian and that Albertans, often more so than almost any other Canadians, come and go from this province regularly, and quite honestly, the stronger and more stable that the Canada Pension Plan can be, the better for all Canadians. This plan, constructed as it is, would allow Danielle Smith, on a whim, to change almost any element of the plan. And that's just very, very risky and dangerous.
And supplementary is...
And no premier should have that power. No single premier should have that power.
And there will be an ad campaign, or is expected there will be some kind of ad campaign. There will also be this panel going out, and Jim Dinning this morning already said that when somebody goes to the microphone and talks about stealing pensions, he's going to refer them to the report.
That's right.
So you heard him say that. So when you've got the panel out there, led by, Jim Dinning with a lot of experience in politics, when you've got ad campaign and whatever else, how do you plan to fight on this issue, given what's going to be going on?
Well, there's no question that I'm frustrated about the fact that citizens of Alberta, including those of us in the official opposition, but generally citizens as a whole, are going to have to fight back against a campaign that is being funded by their own tax dollars in order to convince people that it's a good idea to lose their pension or to jeopardize their pension or have their pension stolen. So it's a very unfair situation that we're going into. However, I also know that the vast majority of Albertans have said repeatedly that they don't want their pension fund, their retirement security, to be used as a political tool in an unending political game between this government and Ottawa. They want their pension to be theirs. They want the UCP to take their hands and keep their hands off of their pension.
It looks like we're heading towards a referendum on this. Just looking at your crystal ball for me for a second. Let's say there is a referendum, Albertans vote that they do want an APP. How do you see the quote-unquote negotiations with Ottawa going on this?
Well, I think this is another thing that makes all of this so fake, is that the negotiations aren't just with Ottawa, they're with all the other provinces, because this is something that all provinces have contributed to. Let me be clear. There's nothing to stop Ontario from using the same strange formula, which is being used out of context in this report, and using that formula to make their own demand for what they're owed. And to be clear, it would probably take the whole. It would be more than what's in the CPP right now. So, I mean, what we're doing here is this is a setup for years and years and years of fighting an economic insecurity and retirement insecurity for Canadians. And it's going to undermine investment security, and it's going to undermine economic growth. So should we, heaven forbid, get to a point where the government is able to browbeat Albertans with their own taxpayers' dollars into a particular outcome, it's not good news for Canadians, it's not good news for Albertans, it's not good news for our economy, it's not good news for retirement security.
Pension has been a hot topic in this province for years, probably longer than I've been alive. I want to know, how would an NDP government improve the contributions as it stands right now, the benefits coming back Because most Albertans, most average Albertans, I think if you were to take a poll, would say that they feel like Alberta is getting a raw deal on pension, whether it's I guess, dramatic as this report says, or whether it's just a little bit.
Well, as I said before, we were proud when we were in government to work with other provinces to make the careful adjustments that would result in an increased pension plan. So that was one thing that we did do. The other thing, of course, that we can do is look at supplementing it, as we already do, ensuring that there's more support for low and middle income pensioners here in Alberta, and making sure that that supplements with the old age security, which of course we also know is a federal program. So there's a range of things we can do to make sure that people can retire with dignity. And so that is without question something we do need to focus on. I mean, I find it ironic that the UCP is talking about this issue at the same time that they are ignoring the crisis in affordable seniors housing right now. You want to help Alberta retirees? Why not focus in on where they're telling us they're in crisis? It's affordable housing. It's affordable seniors housing. Yet we have a provincial government that is completely MIA on this issue, and that's their job. So that's where I would focus.
Hannah Said from City News. Quebec already has their own pension plan, so why not Alberta when Premier Smith and the Alberta government assures they will not make the final decision on this? It will be in the hand of Albertans through this panel and referendum.
So, one of the things about Quebec, Quebec went into this assuming that by going it alone that they would have a better outcome. But what we do know from that experience is that Quebecers pay more in premiums in order to enjoy the comparable benefits that the law requires. So that's an experience that we know we have. But also Quebec went into it at the very beginning of the plan. The method of coming out of it now is far more complicated and generates far more insecurity, economic as well as individual, for people all across the country.
You say that Premier Smith wants to take Albertans' pension money, but she's putting this decision in the hand of Albertans through the panel and referendum.
Well, but the problem here is that the panel and the referendum are obviously constructed to manipulate public opinion, to use taxpayers' dollars to manipulate public opinion, to advertise arguments that are false, and that will mislead people about the actual consequences of this decision. So I think when you sell somebody something based on false information, that's a form of theft.
And you just mentioned the battles with Ottawa, and Jack Mintz wrote a column today about this and mentioned that the federal government could be reasonable on some energy and climate issues, and that would go a long way to improving the relationship with Alberta. Do you think that this is all a bargaining chip, given the significance of the fund of CPP? Is this a bargaining chip in other battles Alberta is having with the federal government right now?
I think it is. I think that is one of the two primary objectives that are underway right here. I think, first of all, as scary as it sounds, is that Danielle Smith and the UCP really do want to get their hands to rummage about with our pension dollars and for whatever purpose strikes them in any given day. So that's the first object, which is very concerning. But the second one absolutely is, yes, that it is clearly being used as a bargaining chip. I mean, there's no distance between Jack Mintz and the Premier's office. They're sort of one and the same, and that opinion there is part of a larger campaign. And what we've said all along is that when it comes to Albertans' pension funds, when it comes to our retirement security, that is not a tool to be used in partisan political games of the day. It's just not. And so they need to stop.
Okay, we'll go to questions on the line. First question goes to Sean Amato from CTV.
Red Deer MLA Jason Stephens spoke at a 1 million march in Red Deer. The Premier wouldn't take a firm stance on the protests yesterday or today, but the UCP told me that they're okay with Stephens' attendance. and classified it as grassroots debate. What do you make of that?
Let me begin by saying to all queer and trans Albertans, and particularly to queer and trans youth, that you are loved, you are respected, and of course that your human rights are as important as anyone else's human rights. And there are a lot of people who are going to fight very, very hard to make sure that that never changes. Now, this morning, I was shocked, actually, to view a video online of a small child at one of these rallies saying horrible, horrible things. It broke my heart. Children are not born with hate in their heart, but somebody convinced a 4 or 5-year-old to hold a mic and spew hate. And the Premier is failing to condemn this. And it is that, to me, is one of the most profound failures in leadership that I've ever seen. That hate must be condemned, and the fact that the Premier is normalizing it by allowing one of her caucus members to participate in this is appalling, just appalling.
Is there a follow-up, Sean?
Yeah, what would you have done, or what should the Premier do with that MLA now?
They should be out of caucus. Shouldn't be anywhere near the caucus. Long since should have been kicked out. Should have been the first thing the Premier said this morning.
Okay, we'll go to our next caller, Catherine Gurkowski. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my question. So you had mentioned the possibility of, like, if Ontario leaves, then there would be nothing left. I'm wondering how you think other provinces are going to react to this proposal, and whether you're doing outreach to other provinces as part of your reaction to this report.
Well, I certainly can't speculate or speak for other provinces, but certainly I know from our own time in government when we were able to negotiate the improvements to CPP that we saw come into effect in 2019, that every province takes these matters very, very seriously, and they understand the importance of CPP. And to be very clear, Alberta is not just picking a fight with Ottawa. They are picking a fight with all Canadians. And that's yet another reason why retirement security is being jeopardized and how economic growth is being deeply jeopardized. And it's very irresponsible. But again, I raise that issue just to underline how ridiculously dishonest the numbers are, which are included in this PR document, otherwise known as a report.
Is there a follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, so I mean, in the past, you've launched a Hands Off My CPP campaign. I'm just wondering what's the plan for the opposition going forward if you think this whole process is rigged? What are you going to do to oppose it?
Well, we're going to be working very hard to give all Albertans who are so deeply concerned about this plan an avenue to make sure that their voice is heard. And so we will work alongside those folks. We have heard from tens of thousands of Albertans up to this point who are desperately concerned about what this means for their future retirement security. And so we'll be working alongside them. Our critic, who is taking the lead on this, Shannon Phillips, has already been connecting with so many people, and I know she'll be doing more, as will all of the other 36 members of our caucus. We will be reaching out and giving people as many opportunities as we can to amplify and elevate their voices, just the same way the UCP government is using Albertans' tax dollars to amplify the voice of this of the small group of people behind this ridiculous plan.
Okay, we'll go to our next caller. Please state your name and outlet off the top.
Hi there, it's Jeremy Thompson with CTV Edmonton. Thanks for taking my question here. Basically wondering, we heard today during the press conference that, the province has multiple legal opinions that sort of, support, I guess, the validity of this report. You're saying it's full of false figures and false sort of pretenses. I guess, what do you make of that sort of legal opinions supporting this and sort of the damage that might be here for LifeWorks' kind of reputation doing this report? They're kind of standing behind their work.
Well, I'm not terribly fussed one way or the other about the reputation of LifeWorks. They made the choice to create the report, and I guess they'll live by it. What I do know is I expect very quickly we're going to see a lot of commentary and analysis about the merits of this report and the quality of this report, and I suspect that their reputation will go accordingly. As far as the so-called legal opinions, well, that's great. By all means, roll them out. Let's take a look at them. Let's see what they have to say. And then I'm sure that there will be others too. I myself, having, practiced law, I know when you've got one issue and 4 lawyers, you typically end up with 8 opinions. So none of that's determinative. What I do know is that there's a tremendous amount of insecurity, and the numbers that are in this report are make-believe, and it demonstrates a clear plan on the part of the UCP to manipulate public opinion in order to inappropriately get access to Albertans' pensions.
Was there a follow-up, Jeremy?
Just so the Premier seems to be saying with this report that Alberta has been sort of subsidizing the rest of Canada with our sort of outsized pension contributions. And I seem to recall a similar argument being made during the sort of the lead up to the equalization referendum, which was certainly an oversimplification and maybe just outright wrong. I guess, do you see that same sort of oversimplification here? And I guess, what do you make of that notion that Alberta has been subsidizing the rest of the country?
Well, listen, I think at any given sort of 10-year period, it is true that provinces with slightly younger populations and more employment will contribute more. But, one of the things that's not identified or quantified in this report, quite honestly, which they actually quietly acknowledge in certain spots, is the fact that when somebody works for 20 or 30 years in Alberta and then moves to BC to retire, that ends up showing up in this analysis as Alberta put all the money in and BC took it all out. But you know what it actually was? It was an Albertan who worked in Alberta and then retired somewhere else. And so the reality is that there's a lot of misinformation in this report, and it's part of a UCP practice of simplification to the point of dishonesty. And it's part of their ongoing combative effort to distract from the kinds of things that they're not doing well in the province of Alberta, like, for instance, before, addressing the housing crisis. So, this is a continuation of the same pattern, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that Albertans get a fair understanding of the issues.
Okay, we'll do one more pass for questions, either in person or on the line. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I'll just do 3 in a row here then. I'm just wondering, if the Premier is saying that, Albertans have the final say on this thing by heading to a referendum, this is a very, very complicated situation with the pension. I guess I wonder if you think it's appropriate to put this to a referendum.
Well, listen, it would have been appropriate to have this conversation during the provincial election. And you'll note that the Premier refused to engage or to make this an issue during the provincial election. So I think that's the first thing. When you talk about referendums, how about doing it at the most democratic time of the year, which is the provincial election, as opposed to at a different time when they get to use tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to manipulate public opinion, which of course they're not allowed to do during a provincial election as much. So that's really the big problem. But, overall, what I would say is that if you're going to go down this path, you need to give people accurate information. And so before we even get to the conversation about whether there should or shouldn't be a referendum, let's have a conversation about giving the facts to Albertans, the real facts. And that's what's so incredibly dishonest about this whole exercise.
Okay, and that's all for today. Thanks.